Right, okay.
I like that.
That's the beauty of video editors. Right. Good day and welcome to this special edition of the show where Cendrine and I chat to people at the top of their game and get to know more about their interests and how they can help others. Good evening, Cendrine.
Hello, hello.
And would you like to introduce our special guest today?
Oh, I would be delighted. Hello, Katrina. Finally, we're seeing each other.
Hey!
Hello, Steven. So Katrina is someone very special in my life. We've been friends for a number of years now, and she is one of the best website designers I know. She has a very unique way of designing websites. If you've known her for a while, you will recognize the website she's worked on. So it's really interesting. And she's a specialist on WordPress as well. So even though WordPress powers more or less 25% of all the websites in the world and the blogs, there are still people in 2016 who don't really know what WordPress stands for. They're very leery about it. They don't know what they can do, their option, the possibilities, and so on and so forth. So I really wanted to have someone today who can basically explain the basics in plain English, and Katrina is definitely the right candidate for that because she's helped me so much with my own websites and my go-to resources for anything WordPress. So I'm very excited to have her today. So Katrina, before we get into the meat of WordPress, I'd like you to introduce yourself to us.
All right. Well, I am Katrina, or Kat Moody, and I am a mom, a wife, and a little bit of a geek, which is how I make my living. I build, design, develop, and put together WordPress sites. I pull sites over from static HTML or from Blogger as well. But I also love to troubleshoot. I like to help people find out what's wrong, either in their process or in their design of their website, so that they can have higher conversions and actually have more return visitors and maybe more sales. So I'm a problem solver in that respect, and I think that helps a lot of small-time business owners as well. When it comes to great design and even okay design, a lot of times having the goals and knowing what your goals are and how it relates to your overall business is the first step. So I like to say I'm the first step in a really, really long process of getting to something really awesome on a website. So.
Wonderful. You okay, Cendrine?
Yeah, no, I was waiting for you to ask a question. Otherwise, I have a question.
Oh, right. Okay. Now, basically, when should people look to set up a WordPress site? Why should they do it?
Well, I mean, any small business owner, and that's where I focus on, but I mean, it can be a blogger, it can be any business. I mean, from the small mom and pop shop down the street to the New York Times as WordPress. So any size business can be on WordPress, any type of business can be. Okay. I think the first step is finding out if you have something to say, and if you do, then you could probably be on WordPress and you could do a really good job of either promoting yourself, selling something, or selling yourself. A lot of people are on WordPress so that they can sell themselves as a writer or a performer or a publicist or whatever it is that they do. WordPress allows them to not only do it, but to present themselves to the world, to kind of create, if you will, a persona online that hopefully matches their personality in the real world. And the joy of having WordPress is that it gives you a very user-friendly way to put together a very complex website. And it can be as easy or as complex as you want. So you aren't limited by whether or not you have the skills to do something amazing with it. You can hire somebody to do something amazing with it. Or you can put something very simple together yourself and stepstone your way into a really amazing site down the road.
So when we talk about WordPress, there is WordPress.com and WordPress.org. So would you be able to explain the main differences?
Sure. So in the real world, you either use somebody else's space, you rent, or you own. And in the WordPress space, it's the same thing. You either use the WordPress space, their servers, and that's the WordPress.com version, You basically don't have to worry about hosting. You don't have to worry about if your site's up or down because they take care of that. They have all of the nuts and bolts together. You can start completely from free just to post stuff how you want. And then you can pay for your domain. You can pay for upgrades and other such things to expand your usability per se. The problem with using the free WordPress for your business needs is because after a bit of time, you're limited by the actual rules and conditions that WordPress sets up for business owners. So for small business owners especially, I recommend WordPress.org instead. And what that is it's like an application that you actually install on a server. And most hosts like GoDaddy or Bluehost or SiteGround or any of the hosts out there, almost all of them have like almost a one-button installation. So you can very easily install WordPress if you're a beginner even, and heck, half the time they'll do it for you. And so you can start relatively simply with this open source platform. And basically what you're doing is you're cutting out all of the development time. You know, in the past, you had to know HTML and JavaScript and CSS, and you had to know how to tie everything together to have your own website. And so you had to spend a lot of money to get online relatively expensively at that rate. With WordPress, you can get online really cheaply with a modest investment, and you can build on that over time, or you can make a splash and actually, you know, have a professional help you with designing and developing and putting the whole thing together. So WordPress.com is the free platform. It's a great way to put your feet in the water and get them wet and see if it's the right thing for you. I recommend it for bloggers, those folks who are just finding their voice and not positive if they're going to monetize their platform. WordPress.org is definitely for small business owners and others who definitely want to not only monetize, but build and grow their website into a channel for their marketing hub. So it depends on how far you want to take your website as to how seriously you take the host that you use. So, you know, WordPress.com versus WordPress.org in a nutshell.
Now that's really the best explanation I've ever heard. See, I told you, she explained in plain English. I've never heard a clear explanation, so thank you.
Right. In terms of doing it on your own, and you own the site and you're responsible for it, how can you keep control of things? I mean, things like backups and so on, that you've got to do for yourself. Is that a straightforward process?
Well, yeah, there's a bit of a learning curve, especially with WordPress.org, because most of the time, if somebody's coming to WordPress.org, it's because they're familiar with the WordPress.com, or maybe they're familiar with Liger or Medium or one of the other channels where they handle everything and all you have to worry about is posting your stuff. And so with WordPress.org, I like to say it's kind of like your house. You have your foundation of your house, which a builder might put together for you. You have your shutters, your doors, the color paint, all of these other things. And so what you're able to do is you take finite control. You pull somebody in to put a heavy reinforced steel door on your house, or security enhanced windows, or really pretty paint, or cedar siding, or whatever you want to do to build your house or your WordPress site up. You can pull somebody in to do, you can install a theme to do, or you can have a plugin that handles it for you. And the joyful thing about WordPress, even though there is a learning curve, is there's tons of amazing resources out there that can teach you how to do as little or as much of it as you want. So yes, one of the first things that I tell clients, even my most modest little, cheap website clients, is, you start from the basics. And that is you take care of the most basic security stuff that you can, which is common sense stuff. You don't want to admin as your username. You don't want a basic, easy to guess website password. Hello, it's 2016. We don't want to do silly, stupid stuff like that these days because we know better. So don't do it on your WordPress site because you wouldn't do it in your house. So you start with your base. You build your foundation and you put together the theme that looks the nicest that you can then customize to meet the needs at the time that you need it. For some people, especially using some platforms like Genesis, where They have a base theme and what we call a child theme, which kind of sits on top of it so you can customize it more. You literally install the theme and they walk you through how to customize it so that you can add your logo and your fonts and every specific little thing that you need. Within 2 or 3 hours, you can have your basic design and it looks nice, it looks professional, and it's a great stepping stone before you spend out, you know, hundreds or even thousands of dollars putting a more quality, robust type of solution together for your business. And so with WordPress, yes, there's things that you have to worry about. You have to keep on top of your updates. You have to keep on top of backups. And you need to be aware of these things. In the same way that you would not own a house in this year without knowing where the keys were to get inside, with WordPress, you have to know where those keys are. You have to know where your basic security measures are and how you would reset those if the need should arise. And if you don't know, which a lot of my clients start out not knowing, then you should have somebody walk you through. Even I, for 2 or 3 hours, could sit and walk somebody through for a very modest charge to help them get backup, restoration, basically teach them how to do something to restore their site if something goes wrong. Teach them, you know, you make sure you have your backups, make sure you know how to restore, how always keep things updated. Here's how to roll your site back if there's a problem. All of these things that seem very overwhelming for the small business owner are things that they can do really easily if they really do want to save the money. And just to put it out there, there's a lot of folks like me out there that are more than happy to handle what we call the maintenance of a WordPress site, where, you know, me or there's actually 2 or 3 really high quality sites that handle ongoing maintenance, updates, repairs, that kind of stuff. So if you're not a technical person, you don't have to stay on top of the technical side of your website. You can trust somebody else to do it for you. And it doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg to do it. You can, for under $100 a month, have all of the basic elements of your site under control and handled by somebody full time, or, you know, as the need should arise, and you're protected. So what I tell my folks is, what's it worth to know that you have a geek in your back pocket? What's it worth to know that if you have a problem with your site, you have somebody that you can call who is not only going to say, oh yeah, you need to do A, B, and C, but is also going to say, hey, guess what? I'll just jump on and take care of that for you, because that's what they do. And so what you have to think about when you have your own site is how many things you want to handle for yourself, because let's face it, if we as entrepreneurs and our own little business people, if we were to be honest, we would admit that we want to handle it all because we want to have control over it, because honesty is the best policy. That's how we are, okay? But in the real world, you lose money if you spend 4 hours doing something that it could take a pro an hour to do. In the real world, you lose money if you can't handle the bulk of your work because you're doing things that you are not good at. So at a certain point, you have to decide, is your money better spent hiring somebody to do something to save you the hassle, or is it better spent taking a lynda.com course and learning how to do basic customizations yourself so that you can be in the saddle, so to speak, and in control of that stuff? For some people, having that level of geeky control is a must. They love it. There's a thrill in it. I admit it. I totally get that. So it's each person's comfort level when it comes to how much and what they want to do to handle their website. But yes, they have to do these basic, it's like a housekeeping kind of thing. You don't want your house to get dirty. You don't want dust to be all over the place. You don't want, water to be running all over the floor and the sinks to be overflowing with dishes. And in the same way, you don't want to leave your WordPress site, unmaintained and open to anybody who pokes their head in to test if there's a vulnerability. Same process.
Yeah. And but you talked about, I don't remember if you talked about plugins, but earlier, but for someone who has a really, really tiny budget, who's just getting started, and I'm thinking about my particular case, I had $0 when I got started. I know there are a number of plugins that people can use and that can take care of the backups and so on and so forth minimally. So are there any plugins that you would recommend to take care of the basic stuff for your WordPress?
Well, there are so many plugins that I could recommend off the cuff for any number of things. Instead, what I will do is say you should have at least 4 specific types of plugins. And there should be a few specific things you look at when you decide if they're the ones you want to use. All right? Because let's face it, there's over 100,000 plugins available in the WordPress.org repository. They don't all have great ratings, and there's a reason why. All right? So let's let the first step go. All right. The first step is, yes, I could tell you what I use and what I provide support for myself. But you guys are not going to go for me as much as I'm awesome and I totally love it. So let's go over the basics. You have to have a security setup on your site. Some security plugins are an all-in-one. They handle security and backups and everything in between. And sometimes that's what you want. If you want one plugin that handles a lot of different things, then you might look at something like this, something like iThemes, Backup Buddy, and their Stash. That's something where you can do backups, restorations. You can actually control and drill down to do specific backups of specific tables in your database at a given time. Let's say you just want the very basic. Well, you know you have to have backup. So you could use something like Backup WordPress, which is something I'm affiliated with, just full disclosure there. But you could use something like that that's completely free. It would give you a backup to your server. So if there is a problem, you could access it if there were, an issue. One of the things that I do suggest, no matter what backup solution you use, go through the documentation, look through their website, and go through the WordPress.org forums, because the first thing that you want to know is what are you going to do if there's a problem? So many times I run into people who have installed a backup plugin and they think that's all they have to do. Guess what? They don't magically back up your site.
Yep.
So you not only have to make sure that you have it set up to do regular backups, but hello, if your site goes down, how are you going to restore your files? And for some people, they know that technically they would not want to be in the middle of that nightmare. So that's when they say, okay, if my site goes down, I'm calling Kat because she's going to handle restoring my site. You know what? That's fine. Kat does that. But you need to have that plan in place and know ahead of time that it's what you're going to do. Because let me tell you, the more time you spend trying to figure out how you're going to get your site back, the less chance you have of that backup actually working to restore your full site. Because the longer you go in between when your backup was taken and when you're actually restoring your site, the greater chance of corruption, corroded files, and literally losing files that you might otherwise need. So a backup plugin is a must. It doesn't matter what you use for that backup, but for basic security, backup is the first step. For security overall, you have what we call security hardening plugins. Basically, they help you lock down your website. Remember when I said your first step was to make sure that you're not using the admin username and a stupid, easy to ridiculously, guess password? Well, these types of plugins will not only help you to know that you're not doing that, but they're also going to hide certain files that hackers might easily find. They might help you even hide your login page so it's harder for somebody to find it to try and hack into your site. So some of these extra security plugins, they go beyond the backup and restoration, and they literally harden your site to protect it against hackers and malware attempts that, they're easy to protect against, but most people just don't think to do it. And so, yes, you can do a lot of these things yourself, but the plugins, there's some free ones out there and there's some paid ones. Look at what you're getting if you use one of these things. And then if you use a security plugin, be especially aware of the fact that some of these will totally slow down your admin of your WordPress site. So they'll make it very slow to use. And usually that's because they're scanning files to make sure there's no changed files happening in the back of the site. And so you can change how often it scans files, how frequently it scans specific files, and even lock off certain files that shouldn't ever be changed. And it doesn't matter if there's any change at all. It'll just say, oh my gosh, red alert, somebody tried to change your index page. So some of these plugins have different security measures, and you should be aware of what those are. And if you're not comfortable with that, then almost every single one of the premium ones has a service that'll help you set it up for a very nominal fee, under $100, to help you get it set up with somebody who is either known to the company or is part of the company. And so what you're looking for, if you go with a professional to help you set something up like that, what kind of guarantee do they offer? If they mess up your site, are they going to fix it? Will they be there with you if there is a problem in the future? If something could have been enabled and wasn't, and as a result you're hacked, are they going to help you oversee getting it fixed? So these are the kinds of questions that every small business owner needs to be asking themselves. We think about it in the real world because we're talking, face to face with people, and we learn over years and years of time here that we have to measure and decide if somebody is trustworthy based on our interactions with them. The online world, it's so much easier to look at a plugin and go, oh, that looks awesome, I'm going to use it, with no thought whatsoever of how you're going to recover if that doesn't work the way you want it to. Another, just a small note, when it comes to security plugins specifically, pay attention to the different settings that will cause great issues on some sites. There are some settings on, especially like bulletproof WordPress and I think even iTheme security. If you enable kind of the basic settings, you're almost always, like, it's 90% of the time it's safe. You're not going to mess up your site. All it's going to do is basic hard things. But they have these additional settings, and if you click on them, what it might do is harden like your WP content folder. And that's great. That's something that you can totally use, except if another plugin or your theme needs access to it so that it can scan files for something else that's going on in your theme. So you have to be aware that every once in a while, those things that are really awesome features that, oh my gosh, it's going to protect all of these files. Oh my gosh, I just took my whole website down to the white screen of death because you know what? It worked too well. So you have to be aware of what settings might cause problems, and again, know what you're going to do if you run into that. That's why when I talk to my clients about setting up security plugins and such, I literally say, hey, let's go ahead and I call it geeky text because I'm all about the geekiness, but talk with your developer or talk with your host even and ask, are there development hours? Is there a way that I can just pay somebody to work through setting up my security plugin and my backup process and, all the basic stuff so that I know if something goes wrong with my site, I can recover it. And also so that I know that there's basic protection. And just one more caveat there, when it comes to protecting your site, please be aware and do not let anybody sell you like, I don't even know what to call it, but it's a dream. And that is that your site can be 100% protected from any hacking or malware attempt. It is not possible on the internet to 100% protect any website. It's just not. What you can do are take the steps necessary to protect your site against the vast majority of hacking and malware attempts. And once you've done that, you've basically locked your front door and made it so it's much harder for the person to get into your site to cause the mischief that they would do. If somebody is determined, 9 times out of 10, they will be able to find a way into your site. And if that does happen, there are other steps you can take. You can literally limit the IPs that come to your site. You can limit who's able to log into your site. Tons of different security steps that you can take if you find yourself the target of somebody who's really determined to get into your site. But at that stage, you need to be working with a professional if this is not your bread and butter, because otherwise you're going to lose your site and you're going to have to put it up again somewhere else, and you're going to mutter and groan and you're not going to learn your lesson. And the lesson is that you protect yourself the best you can. You have a redundancy in place, so if you need to, get stuff back up, you can get it right back up to where it was last backed up. Okay, so if you know that you post a new post every day, then you need your database backed up every day. If you post once a week, well, then you could probably go every 3 to 4 days. So these are the questions, though, that most website owners, and especially WordPress website owners, they don't stop to think about because, again, you're not used to thinking about, security and backups and all of this stuff. You get hit, you get blindsided when something goes wrong. Instead, let's start thinking proactively. All right. So if we're going to think proactively, then we're going to go worst case scenario, my site goes down. If it goes down, it's because it was hacked, there's malware stuff going on, or maybe, just maybe, and 9 times out of 10, this is the case, maybe your host sucks. That happens. We, go with the cheap host and we pay for that sometimes. So be aware, you know what, if your site goes down, here's the steps you got to take to try and get it back up again. And if you're not sure at that point what you need to do, then you need to know who to call. Ghostbusters, you got to know who to call. Well, same thing when it comes to your WordPress site. Who are you going to call? Well, my people know to call me, but you know what? Everybody, like, your first stop could be your host. It could be a WordPress professional that you are, close to and follow. It could be a friend, a friend of a friend who gives you a recommendation on a person to talk to. I always recommend going with personal recommendations when you're looking for a professional, especially somebody you're going to trust this, website to, because this is like your precious, my precious. So don't just blindly trust somebody. Get recommendations, vet the person that you're going to be using, but know in advance that that's something that you're going to want to do. You don't want to be having your site down, losing possible revenue, or your site goes down because of a traffic spike, and oh my gosh, you're missing all of these site visitors coming to your site because the site's down. You have to know how you're going to respond to those things. So yes, you have a proactive response where you know not only what steps you're going to take if there's a problem, but you also have the reactive response, which is, oh my gosh, if my site goes down, I'm calling Kat. If my site goes down, here's the site number for, Bluehost or GoDaddy, I'm calling them. If my site goes down, I'm doing A, B, and C in a row. Have it by your computer, know it, follow it, do it. And 9 times, I do the 9 times out of 10 all the time. I think we just say it because it sounds good, but usually your site can get back up really fast because generally speaking, it's a glitch or it's something really easy that can be fixed or tweaked that can get your site back up. And the people who know how to fix those things can get it done really fast. You, on the other hand, might pull your hair out before you get it fixed. Just word of warning. Okay. I've been there. I understand.
Right. How do you know your site's down?
I'm sorry?
How do you know that your site is down?
If you go to your website and there's the white screen of death instead of your pretty homepage, it's down. Sometimes, though, you might have an error message. Sometimes you are so smart and awesome and you just installed this amazing plugin that's going to fix all the ills on your website, and you just had the best possible time fixing all the settings on that sucker, and oh my God, it's not loading. And that's when you know your plugin killed your site. So there's lots of things that could kill the site, but generally speaking, you have one of 2 ways that your site will go down. Either just the admin is affected, which means that the WP admin, which are the files that control the actual admin of the WordPress site, are affected. Usually, this kind of thing is like those are almost always related to a plugin. Not always, but almost always. And generally speaking, if you disable the plugin that's causing problems, then you get your site back up. And if you don't know which plugin it is, then your host can help you disable all the plugins so that you can go in and test them one by one. The other way that your site can go down is where you could get into your admin, but if you try to visit your actual website, you can't get to any pages, or maybe it's not that the site itself is completely down, it's that you're going and it doesn't look like your site. Like there's no styling, or all of the pictures are broken, or there's something really weird with the display and it just doesn't look quite right. And a lot of times what happens is when a plugin is updated or something is updated in the back end, it could be the smallest little thing, but every once in a while it will reset something in a plugin or in a theme sheet or in a style sheet for something. And so it kicks off what is supposed to fix your display. And there are ways to reset that. And sometimes it's because of a plugin. Sometimes it's because your files, literally have to be rejiggered. Sometimes there's a corrupted file. That happens sometimes, and you just have to replace it. Most people aren't going to have to deal with the random stuff. I say this 9 times out of 10 thing, but it's true. Most of the time, I can't even begin to tell you how many times a client has called me and go, oh my gosh, my site's down. I don't know what happened. I just don't understand. And I go, well, what happened right before your site went down? Well, I was then playing with this new plugin and I hit this setting and I saved it and it went kaboom. And I go, so basically you did a plugin and the plugin didn't like your site. Well, I didn't do anything. And so when it comes to troubleshooting your website, first rule of thumb, be willing to admit that you might have played a little when you shouldn't have, because I'll be honest, I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've had somebody go, no, I didn't do a thing. And I go and find that they tried to put a function in the function file with no, proper PHP format, or, they tried to add some CSS, but they didn't actually add CSS. They just added some random gibberish. And so the site says, oh my gosh, the coding is all broken. I hate you. And it stops working, and so be honest. But you know what? A lot of people, they just don't realize that every action has an opposite and equal reaction, even in website design, and especially in website development.
Totally agree. Because you can get a situation where plugins, because they're written by different software houses, use the same unit and they don't work well together. And it doesn't matter doesn't matter who supplies them, they can't test against everything, can they?
Absolutely.
No, they really can't. And that's why, and as you become more knowledgeable about WordPress, this is to all the newbies out there, but as you become more knowledgeable, you'll also know to start recognizing with a wink and a nod when people say that they code things to what we call WordPress standards or to proper PHP standards, that they vet them, that they run them through a code review. These are all different steps that developers will take to maintain forward compatibility for their themes and plugins as they relate to other professionals. And when it comes to the WordPress community, we are an amazingly large community of a lot of passionate people, but we also have a great number of standards and kind of operating procedures, if you will, set up and in place to help protect the community, because there are different sets and standards that each developer will go through as they're trying to put their plugin or their theme together. And sometimes, because of just different coding standards, sometimes even between, say, the US and the UK, there's some, it wouldn't be a big deal, but an extra space here or there might actually kill a plugin on a site if there's an extra space also added by this other plugin kind of thing. So there's all kinds of different things that can play into it, but you want to see, if you're going for a theme or a plugin, you want something that's actively developed, where the developers or the support staff are very visible, highly reactive to both questions, comments, and concerns, and look for where their support is. If it's possible for you to review forums for a premium plugin, especially, or a premium theme, if you can go through forums and see how reactive they are, how quickly they respond to requests, or, oh my gosh, my site's down and what the heck did your plugin do? And you see that they're there within an hour or even a day, and they're helping to walk the person through the fix, then you know that they're very reactive. They'll have your back if there's a problem and their plugin caused it. You don't want somebody who hasn't updated their plugin in 2 years and never checks in on the forums, who doesn't respond if somebody has a question. You want to move on to something that is better for you, instead of potentially causing you a lot of headaches down the road. Active development is a big thing in WordPress because it's been going on for so long, and because so many themes and plugins are developed every year, it's very easy for a developer to lose track or even to lose interest in an older project. And so you want to make sure that you're working with a project that has enough interest to sustain it while you need to use it.
And in terms of themes, a lot of people rely on free themes, but they come with limitations, just like plugins. They're coded a certain way. Sometimes they'll have a lot of mistakes, and that's something that you and I have discussed.
We do get disgusted with it.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, when you pull your hair out. We discussed that when I was debating whether I should use Genesis, the framework, or not. And you convinced me to use Genesis and rely on child themes, which is heaven sent, honestly. So when it comes to free themes, would you recommend someone who's unsure? I would talk about someone who's unsure. Would you recommend going to Genesis or a similar framework, or going for a free theme?
Oh, okay. Well, this one it's a little bit more subjective. I and many other folks that work on websites would almost always, again, 9 times out of 10, 9 professionals out of 10 will agree that you should use not necessarily the premium, because some of the free ones available are very, very good. What you need to look at is not whether you're looking at a premium or a free theme. You need to look at how well developed it is. Unfortunately, most people don't understand what makes a theme well developed. In a nutshell, when you're looking at a WordPress theme, you don't want a theme that looks like it has all the bells and whistles. And here's why. It will not be forward compatible. You will be locked into that theme until the moon rises and you have to purchase another theme that will again lock you into a million things, because they try to do everything within the theme. In WordPress, one of those standards that I kind of mentioned earlier, called WordPress standards, hey, big original name. But one of those standards is that plugins will handle the functionality of the site. Themes will handle the display of the site. So some of these really fancy themes, and I'm not going to mention the site where you could buy some of them, but let's just say it starts with a T. But some of these really amazing, oh my gosh, that looks so awesome theme, they put so many bells and whistles in that they have loaded down that theme before you ever put it on your site. If you don't have, load balancing on your server, if you don't have caching amazingly set up so that you can offset everything, you will never be able to set your theme up to load as quickly as they do. You will never use half of the features that they claim are absolutely amazing and must have, because, hey, guess what? That theme wasn't built for you. It was built for, a good chunk of 5 or 10% of a specific niche that said they needed A, B, C, and D in order to have a successful website. You are an individual. Your business is an individual and unique proposition. There are only a few specific things that you have to have in order to launch your website. And guess what? It doesn't have anything at all to do with a slider or an image or whatever. It's called a goal. You have to know how you're going to sell yourself, either your business, your product, or your service. And you have to know what your hook is. What's your unique value for the person? If you don't have any of that, you don't have a website. It doesn't matter how pretty it looks, because no one's going to stick around to buy a thing from you. Nothing. So at the expense of sounding vague, let's say that I prefer to let folks go towards Genesis, because I trust the coding standards. I trust the community to help the person make minimal customizations to their theme. I trust the larger WordPress community to help them maintain a safe, consistent, and pleasant user experience as they get to know that theme and as they build it out and tweak it and to do stuff with it. And this is important, Genesis is one of the most consistently coded platform themes for WordPress standards that I've run across. They add their own hooks and filters in, but they don't detract from any of the WordPress ones. And what this means for the person who has no idea what hooks and filters are or why the heck they should care what they are, what this means is that it's not going to break your site, and it's not going to take your information and hold it hostage if you need to switch themes because you're rebranding and you need a different theme to make a different look. Well, the theme that you purchased for, $40 that was a great deal, that included a portfolio and a theme viewer, and it hooked up to a social media site, and it had 10 sliders and 40 sections on the homepage. Hey, guess what? All of that information is locked into place, and you will never be able to move that to another site unless you do it by hand manually, or unless you build a function to actually copy over to a new portfolio or section like custom post type. Sorry. The problem with theme authors who build themes to support functionality, that's what that is. It's a big phrase that means they have a theme that has all the bells and whistles instead of a theme that controls how it looks. All right. So instead of using plugins to help manage all the features of a website, they use their theme to do it. And because of that, they're going to tie you into using just that theme moving forward, instead of being able to have a new theme that looks better, for your needs down the road. Most people go 1 to 2 years before they try on a new theme or they go through a full rebranding, because most small business owners are constantly tweaking and reworking and hoping to rebuild their brands more. So when it comes to a theme, you want something that's well coded to WordPress standards. You want something that's actively developed, has a great community behind it. I tell folks if they want to go for something plain, not plain so much as something safe, but free, start at one of the default WordPress themes, the 2013, 2014, 2015. Every year, the WordPress community works together and presents a new theme, and they have a focus for those themes each year. 1 year it was a magazine type theme. Another year it was a basic theme, good for any basic blog. And so what you need to do is you can go through each of those. Those use the best standards. They give you a great introduction to what features are available by default for WordPress that you can use. And they'll give you a base kind of beginning point, if you will, to know what features you need to look for in the next theme that you get. The one that is going to be more helpful with branding your needs. When you're looking at a theme, it's really easy to look at the demo or the whatever documentation you look at to decide. And usually it's a demo, but sometimes it's screenshots or just pretty images. It's really easy to look at that and see how they have put their demo together and go, ooh, that's so pretty. I want to do it just like that. The problem is that means that you and every other person that uses that theme has it set the same way, because how many other people looked at it and says, ooh, I want to set it up just like that. And so you replace the pictures, you have the same display, the same layout, and even sometimes most of the same text. And there's no originality or personality in that. I tell folks to look for the potential in a theme. Look at, in Genesis, most of the home pages that are set up to use widget areas, which gives you a great deal of flexibility, especially as a new person to using WordPress, to kind of pick and choose what you want to display and where you want to display it. And with that comes that chance to have some flair and some personality that you might not have otherwise. It also cuts down on development time. So if you want a customized theme, which is something that I do for a lot of small business owners, to save on the development costs, I take one theme, and we talk about this. This is all above board. Do not let somebody sell you a custom theme that is a Genesis theme, because you can just buy a Genesis theme. Don't spend the customized money on a default theme. Have somebody talk to you about the difference between those. But basically, when it comes to Genesis, there's so much that you can do, and so easily, that I tend to recommend it for small business owners, because it saves more cost than it entails, down the road. There are a lot of free themes out there. And so I know that when push comes to shove, a lot of small business owners are going to try at least to use 1 or 2 of those to see if they fit their needs. That's okay. Don't feel bad for it. Always consider a theme your stepping stone, but also always look at how active the community around it is, if the developer is responsive to, issues or requests, or if they even have a support forum, how they support the theme, and what happens if there's a problem with the theme, if it's not updated properly, or if it's not updated according to WordPress standards. Half the time, I say half the time again, that's not really scientific. Sometimes what will happen is WordPress will redo a key feature or function in how it displays information. And themes that we're using the old way of displaying it will just break. And so if you have somebody who isn't on top of development and doesn't realize that they have to update that theme display to better account for the way WordPress is now wanting you to display stuff, then you're going to have a theme that breaks when you update WordPress. And so you don't want to do that. And that's why you want active development. You want somebody who is constantly updating according to WordPress standards. And just know, you know what? You don't want to be locked into a theme anyway, but never feel like you do a theme and that's all. You're never going to touch your website again. Mm-hmm. There's a reason most people redo their sites every 1 to 2 years. No. It isn't because they're all designers and dreamers. It's because we are individual and we want to do that. So yeah, when it comes to themes, you're wanting to vet them, but you also give yourself room to play. It's fine to use a free theme. It's fine to use a premium one. You don't have to use a platform like Genesis. The benefit to that is you not only have a built-in community, but all of the child themes work with the Genesis platform. Mm-hmm. So you have to update the platform. You don't have to update the child theme. So you don't lose any of your customizations. That's not always the case in other ones, but then we're getting a little bit more into development. So, I mean, look for how active the community is. Make sure the developer or whoever's providing support is there and available if there are problems. And you know what? Make sure there's good documentation. You want to know how you're going to set up your theme to look as close to the things you loved about that demo as possible, even if you're going to make it, hopefully, your own. So with themes and with plugins, it's buyer beware in WordPress, but it's also community beware, because the best part about WordPress is that community. And if the community discovers a problem with a theme or a plugin and the developer is highly reactive, which is what you want, then that developer is going to be able to use the wisdom of the WordPress community to provide a fix far faster than they could have if they were in an isolated development kind of environment.
Right, okay. You've mentioned a lot about bells and whistles and getting everything sorted. How important is speed in a website? Loading speed. Speed.
Oh, loading speed is like the holy grail when it comes to website design. It is so funny for me, and I do mean, like, I laugh myself silly at this, to come across a site that was newly designed and looks amazing, except it takes 10 seconds to load, or even 4 seconds to load. Because what happens once you pass a couple seconds is you start to lose visitors for every second longer that your site takes to load. So there are a lot of tricks, but there's also just a lot of basic stuff that goes into making sure that your website will load as quickly as possible. One of those, and the first line of defense for every person, is to have a well-coded theme and to use well-coded plugins. And because we are not all developers and we cannot all know what well-coded ones are, that means that we have to do a little research and we have to see what other people recommend and how well it stands up in reviews. But a well-coded theme and a well-coded set of plugins are going to give you a faster overall loading time than a worse combination of themes and plugins. Another thing to look for loading times, every single item that you want to load, every image, every single letter, even, although that's a stretch, every widget area, all images, every font, every single thing that you choose to load on your website takes time to load. And how that time is measured can be in milliseconds, seconds, or whatever, but they add up. And so you are the final authority on what you need to have on your website in order to have it load as quickly as possible. I tell clients, you have a payoff here. Yes, we want your homepage to look spectacular as it loads, but we don't want to drive people away because it takes longer to load. So if we know we're going to have an image-heavy website, then one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to find out how to optimize all images as much as possible so that they display more quickly. If we have an image-heavy website, we're going to find out how we can maybe even delay the loading of images that are further down the page so that we can speed up the loading for the first part of the page. We're going to check and see what kind of scripts are loading. If we have a lot of plugins and they are all loading on every page of the site, then you've just slowed your website down tremendously because all of those scripts need to load. And they don't all just load together. They load one by one by one. Only so many things can load at once. And the web browsers are smart, but they're only so smart. So, website design, it sounds so complex, and it really is. But in the end of the day, everything comes down to a choice. You can choose to have the most magnificent theme and imagery and graphic elements that you want, but you also can choose whether you need every single one of those elements. You also can decide whether every element tells your brand story in the way that you need it to offset whatever it takes off that loading time. So yes, loading time is extremely important. Never let someone tell you it isn't. The only people I've ever seen that can get away with slow websites are mommy bloggers who have people coming for their reviews and giveaways who could care less that it takes forever to load because they're going to open 5 or 6 other ones and they're just going to pop over from one to the next until they all load. Those are the only people I've ever seen that don't care about it. Everyone from the mom and pop store down the street to the New York Times, to the Washington Post, everywhere in between cares about their loading time. And there's a reason behind that. It's because it's important, not just because you want your site to load quickly, but because you literally lose business if your site takes too long to load.
And it's important because an increasing number of people load websites from mobile phones, smartphones as well, right? So you need to take into consideration mobile optimization. That's another important fact too. One question I have for you, and that's the last question I have for you. I know WordPress comes with minimal search engine optimization, right? There's minimal going behind the scenes. What kind of small business owner who doesn't know much about SEO, what can they do to optimize even a little more?
I didn't trademark it or anything, but I have a little system that I set up for my clients. And there's only a few different ways that you can go about setting up SEO. And every single one of them counts on what I call the foundation. That should be familiar. We've talked about it already. Same thing applies in SEO that applies to your website overall. If you don't lay the foundation, you can't build on the foundation. In SEO, the foundation is copy and content. Content is king, and it's king for a reason. You need well-written content that's easy for people to read and to skim, and there needs to be enough of it so that Google doesn't go, oh my gosh, they don't know how to write nothing, do they? So you want high-quality content, and you want at least enough of it that there is something there for Google and for the people that come to your site to read. But also, you need to look at where your opportunities for adding a little extra value are. Most people overlook every element on their site that could be adding just a tiny bit more juice. Specifically, images. They have alt tags, description tags, what we call meta tags that add additional information about each image. Images themselves are highly searched on Google. So if you have an image that's highly relevant to a given search term, chances are that you could potentially get it ranked and actually have your overall search up higher on Google as a result for that same term, for the resulting article that's attached to that image, just because the image is ranked. So you want to always make sure that your alt tags are filled out. And if they aren't, that's a really easy and fairly fast thing that a site owner can take to increase the value of their SEO. And that's what I call the SEO foundation. Alt tags for imagery, also basic tags for their posts that identify what the subject of the post is, main keyword, a descriptive actual title. These are all baseline kind of foundational SEO things. You should be doing all of these on every post that you write, no matter what, every page that you write. I say they should all have a goal, but when it comes to SEO, they should all lay the foundation. And then there's also one really critical element that's especially more important now than it was a few years back. And that is that imagery that we're actually putting tags and stuff on. We need to make sure that we have social media tags attached to our posts that will tell Facebook and Twitter and other sites what they're reading when they look at that. So if somebody shares your newest post to Facebook, you want them, or Facebook, you want Facebook to grab the best description, the title, and the best, most amazing, awesome image that's going to look the best in the timeline for Facebook specifically for your post. And what I help a lot of business owners do is literally set up different images based on the actual network that they're sharing a post to, because they will target the image differently, horizontal or square or even vertical for Pinterest, depending on both the content and the images that are attached to an article. You might actually see a spike in shares and viral ability of a post for a given platform. So with SEO, and especially the last several years, we've got a really heavy concentration in what I call SMO, which is social media optimization. And so when you're optimizing a post for social media as well as for SEO, which is search engines, basically they follow the same pattern. You're laying the foundation no matter what. You're telling the search engine or you're telling the social network, this is what this post is about. This is why people should read it. And you're hoping that you're tying it to the same type of term or phraseology that someone is going to use when they're looking for that. And so when it comes to SEO, the foundation, it applies to the content, but it especially applies to the images themselves, because the imagery, I actually tell folks if they don't have a content plan, they're screwed. But if they don't have an image plan, they're not going anywhere beyond that, because without an image plan of some sort in place, even if you're not doing a lot of different images, you just aren't going to stand out on social media anymore. And so a visual strategy is key, and it's the key for SEO these days as well. You'll stand out more on Google, you'll stand out more on Facebook, Twitter, all of them, if you integrate your images more appropriately. And alt tags and meta tags, I call them the geeky little bits of your posts on websites, but there's a lot of plugins that will actually help you write all of that stuff. They'll put it all in there for you. One of the best ones that does everything out of the box, and it does the bulk of it, even if it doesn't do as much as I'd like, is Yoast, WordPress SEO. It's actually so much a cornerstone of WordPress SEO that it's one of the first rated and listed ones, that WordPress itself will bring up in searches. Sorry, my brain went. So it's actually the one I turn to more times than not. But there's other ones. It's all in one SEO and a couple of other ones out there. I personally love and use Yoast because I trust it, and it's the one I like the most. Plus, he has a premium level. So if you're a local business and you really want to focus on your local SEO, you can actually include not only the free plugin, but you can get a premium upgrade for special local SEO or even video SEO. He has 2 or 3 different ones that basically expand the SEO value of the individual elements that you need for whatever your business needs are. especially I find a lot of local businesses are ignoring the local SEO angle, which basically is, yeah, people might not know what that means, but when you're talking about SEO, you have regular old SEO, which is like Google or Bing or Yahoo. You also have local SEO, which is if somebody's searching for a restaurant that they want to go to visit tonight, they're going in Google and going, I want a Mexican restaurant by me. You want to be in those search results because those are highly targeted, highly sought after. And the chances of you standing out and actually getting a visit that translates to sales are a lot higher because it's a local sale, all right? And so when it comes to local SEO, there's a few additional elements that you'll want to add to your site, including specific meta tag information, a little bit more of those geeky things that Google will look at and be able to tell people who are looking for, say, a local restaurant near them, or a local web developer, or a local designer, or a local social media expert. They're literally, you know, able to categorize based on different elements of the site. And so they'll bring it up based on somebody searching for a local attraction to visit or a local business to do business with.
Wow. Right, that's an hour past, and on my side, I've learned a great deal. I think it's good to meet Katrina, and I've learned quite a lot in the last hour. This will go out on recording. If you'd like to say thank you to everybody who watches, and then post a link in the chat, that would be good. You okay with that?
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, and whilst you okay, Cendrine, would you like to close?
For sure. It was another great chat. I learned a lot, even though I'm a little knowledgeable about WordPress. I obviously learned a lot today. So thank you very much, Katrina, for your time and for answering all our questions in so much depth. So that was fantastic, and I'm sure viewers will learn a lot as well. So thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you, Steven. As always, it's a pleasure.
My pleasure, and it's been great to talk. I look forward to seeing you both again. So good night, everybody. Good day, everybody, and see you all later.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks
Bye.
for having me.
You're most welcome. Bye.
Bye.